Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. This is really exciting for me because I've just been poring over this incredible gentleman's website and literally kind of breathing in his words off the page. He's the most incredible practitioner, but his writing as well. I thoroughly recommend that you visit Philen Naidu's website. Philen, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so pleased to have you with me.
Thank you for hosting me, Jayney.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It really, truly is. I was so excited to obviously in preparation for our chat today to take a look at your website. Your writing is amazing, as I said to you just before we started recording. It just explains so beautifully how you came to your practice. So I was wondering if you can tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about the work that you do.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I work with food as medicine, and this comes from when I was a child. I just gravitated towards my mother in the kitchen, started following her around, and soon realized that I had this curiosity that there was more about food and than what everyone else found, and that I was very interested in why she was doing the things she was doing and how she was doing them, because I could see that there was intentionality about layers and synchronizing how she did things. And I always knew intuitively there was something a little bit more about food. But I'd ask her, and she didn't have answers because she just learned from her mother, who learned from her mother, who learned from her mother. And this is a tradition that's been passed down through the generations from South India through to me in South Africa.
Mhm.
And I followed that with curiosity for a while, and then that kind of all dovetailed together with my own health crises, a series of them that happened with brain injuries from a car accident and a 3-day coma. Then there was Addison's disease and a total shutdown of my endocrine system. Then there was, with that and all the medication around it, there was a total shutdown of my gut, a gut collapse. And I found myself, Western medicine wasn't really providing me with solutions to get to the root. And I realized that that's what was needed, is that I needed to get to the root. I needed to get to the foundation and rebuild my foundation. That symptomatic relief wasn't it. That management of symptoms wasn't it. I needed to go deeper. And then through that whole process and a journey of decades, the wisdom that came down to me through the kitchen tied in together with what was going on in my body. And I found my way along this pathway now where I guide individuals to rebuild their foundations, to meet themselves honestly and gently, and to rebalance and reset nervous system, all through the practice of food, to reset the gut, to heal that relationship between the gut and the brain, what we eat and our mental health. It's just phenomenal what happens in our digestive system and how it affects pretty much this whole system of being that we are, and how it's affected me, and the healing, the deep rooted healing that it's brought into my life has just been phenomenal. And so that's how I've developed this practice now.
Yes. Isn't it incredible? As you were speaking, I was just thinking, isn't it incredible that we get these nudges from the universe? Wake up, come, wake up. This is what you're supposed, this is the path you're supposed to be on. Come on, here's another massive challenge. Wake up, that's the path you're supposed to be on. Oh my goodness, you've really been through it. And I think actually, having had those terrible experiences. I mean, absolutely, just again, reading your story, and obviously we're just touching on it here very briefly, but I do encourage our viewers and our listeners to go and really take a look at the work you do, a deep look, because it is absolutely extraordinary. But I think sometimes when we have been faced with challenges as practitioners, like massive health challenges, I certainly have as well. I think it really assists us in many ways to have even deeper empathy for the people that we work with. And I think we also tend to attract a type of person who resonates with the work that we do. Would you agree with that? Is that something that you feel and you've experienced?
I really do. I really do. And that word empathy is pretty much spot on, because I realized with myself through this journey that I wasn't empathetic with myself first, and then so these health challenges. At first I tried to avoid them and I tried to find shortcuts, and then realizing that that doesn't work. Then having to go deeper within myself, and then realizing to go deeper within myself needs a lot more self-compassion, and gentleness and kindness with self. And then going into that, realizing that there are layers of guilt and shame and all sorts of other stuff that's attached there. And oh my word, it's a whole Pandora's box that opens up. And then through that process of inner work, it happens that I realize that, wow, okay, so everyone out there in the world is actually passing through all of this. And though we might be showing something on the outside or feeling that we need to show something on the outside, but in fact, deeply down inside, there's a lot of stuff that we're all passing through. And I remember going through it myself and realizing, wow, if there was, because I went through it all alone, right? If there was someone who could feel me and meet me in the space, how valuable that would be. And I really feel that that has changed me personally and how I engage with people, and how I wish that we all show up for each other, is realizing that there's a lot of deep pain and unnecessary stuff that we're carrying, that we all would do real well to work with first before we try to solve and fix the symptoms on the surface level.
Yes, yes, I couldn't agree more. It takes an awfully long time for a body to dysregulate. And I think the problem that we face, particularly in more developed, more industrialized nations, is that everybody wants a quick fix. And unfortunately, it took a long time for that dysregulation, that dis-ease to manifest itself in tangible symptoms. And I think a lot of people don't realize that actually, in order to kind of unpeel that onion and really get to the intrinsic, sense, the heart of the matter, and rebuild from there, it takes a while. But with the work that you do, and certainly putting the right fuel, not just in terms of vitamins, the nutritional side of things, but actually from an energetic perspective, that's the stuff that actually serves to rebuild us, rebuild that blueprint as it should be. Now, I know that obviously we've just touched there, as you were saying, about, the food, the gut, the way that we're only just discovering in conventional science, things like, the way that foods actually impact our nervous system and neurotransmitters, for example, and so on. But I would really love to just chat with you about not just foods, but also spices. Now, I know this is very, very important to you, and it's something that you brought up when you sent a few notes in for this interview, but you wanted to discuss spices as medicine, but the right preparation. So again, it's not just a case of, yes, put some cumin into your dish, but or some turmeric into your dish. But would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's phenomenal, really, because much of the world that we live in now, through colonization, came about because of a hunt for spices. There was a realization from the European Empire back then of the importance of spices. And in Ayurveda, we've known this for 5,000 years at least, and we're using it. It's always so funny. Because if you go to India, into an Indian home, and you ask them, like, so what, it's like this thing of a curry powder, or a tikka masala, or these are if you go into a traditional Indian home, these things don't exist, right?
Exactly.
We don't have a curry powder, what we have is about 50 different spices being dried nuts, seeds, pods, flowers, leaves, roots, tree bark.
Mm.
That's what they are. And each one of these contains, and modern research is discovering this now, contains something called volatile oils. And each one of these has therapeutic benefits. And each one of these individually tracks to a specific part of the body. But when you put them together, they also work synergistically. And then there's also a way to prepare them to activate those volatile oils. So you activate the medicinal properties and the healing properties in there. So if you just buy powdered spices off the shelf, these have not been they've not been toasted, they've not been roasted, so they've not been activated, right? So you've got the energy within those spices have not been released yet. They were just crushed into powder, and then they've been stored on a shelf and all around the place at different temperatures and exposed to light, and all of that has diluted what these spices actually hold as medicinal value. And so there is a specific way that we prepare our spices and store our spices. And I mentioned earlier, I used to watch my mother and how she would add things into the pot in layers. There's a specific way that these spices go in first into the warm oil or ghee. And then after that, the next ones go in, and some like to be soaked in liquid, and some like to be activated in the oil or the ghee, and then others you can use the powders, because many people prefer not to have the whole spices floating around in them, biting into a whole cardamom, for example. But then it's always best to toast these and grind them up first yourself, and then use that, rather than going and getting what's already been crushed into powder but not been activated. And so it's a real intentional science. It's a science, thousands of years old, of how to use these plants, because these plants are medicine. They're all medicine, and they're all hugely intelligent, and they're not only communicating with our body, but they're communicating with each other, and they've been doing this for millennia. There's this whole language that they all know that this body has evolved to. And so the way that we prepare our food is so, so, so important. And it's something that we've forgotten in the modern world, because we're so focused, as you mentioned, on the what, the quick. Okay, it's counting calories, counting nutrients, and it's this very targeted, what am I eating? And we've forgotten about the importance and the process of how am I feeding this body.
Yes. Oh my goodness, it's just so exciting and inspirational to hear you speak with so much passion. We're going to have to bring you back. As I said to you before we started recording, we're going to have to bring you back anyway, because we're going to need a full-on tutorial from you at some point, Philen. So, just we'll liaise with our diaries on that. But one of the things that really struck me as well, that I just wanted to touch on for this brief showcase video, is because, of course, the purpose of this is just sort of essentially to just gently introduce you to our viewers and listeners, and then they can go away and learn more about your work. But I was really struck by the way that you talk about, and it's so brilliant that you do this. You talk about building immune systems rather than boosting immune systems, which is so funny, because last CMA's newsletter was I wrote a huge, great long article about the myths around boosting the immune system. And quite honestly, it really gets my goat every time you see one of these magazine or newspaper headlines, boost your immune system, blah, blah, blah. This is the latest one-hit wonder that's going to do that for you. And of course, I know, our viewers know that, no, that's not the way it works. So would you like to speak to that? Because I'd love to hear your thoughts about that particular topic.
Yeah, Jayney, I think it goes back to what you mentioned around, we found ourselves now in a culture of life where everything is, and no one's to blame. It's just the way that everything has evolved in society, that there's less time, and so there's this feeling that people need to fix things quickly. And there's also, we spoke about this in the body. We desperately need a relationship with our body, but a relationship takes time. And then we feel that we don't have the time to put into the relationship with ourselves, because there's business and all of these things to take care of. And so we wait for symptoms to arise, and then we target them and we try to fix them. by boosting. But then we keep ourselves in these repeated cycles. Yeah. But our immune system, as with this whole system, as with life, as with love, is all around relationship. And relationship is something that is built. It's not boosted. And so our immune system is an aspect of our being, an aspect of our body. It's our defense system. It's such an important ally. And we've got everything inside of us. There's this whole organization of incredible intelligence inside of us that we only need to work with it and gradually build it to strengthen it again from the foundations, to give ourselves a solid foundation so that this incredible ally that we have within us, right, more than 80% of which lives in our intestines, in our gut, right, which is super important. By building this foundation and building this healthy gut microbiome, we don't need to wait for symptoms to arise, because our immune system will take care of things before we can actually perceive them on the surface level. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for prevention rather than cure.
Yes.
We're looking for getting to the root of everything instead of waiting it to bubble up to the surface.
Yes, I think that is a beautiful way of looking at it. I think, yes, prevention, but you're absolutely right. And this is where we do so very well in the field of complementary medicine and integrative health, is that we are superb at shoring people up, whether it's immunologically or whole body, mind, spirit, emotions, the whole deal, so as to be more robust, so as not to fall prey to those awful chronic diseases that are so deleterious to health, and all of which have an underlying common denominator of chronic inflammation and various other activities going on as well. Again, circling back to the immune system. So it's really very, very interesting to me that this is, this is the way you do it. You speak so eloquently on the topic. Obviously, as I said, I could speak with you for hours, no doubt, and we're going to have to bring you back for a CMA tutorial. We'll have to get a date in your diary to do so. But what I would want to do now is just talk briefly about the way that you work with people and how they can find you. So if any of our viewers and listeners are thinking, goodness gracious, I really need to speak with Philen, how do they find you, and how do you work with people? Because you're based there in South Africa. How does all this come together?
Right. So it's easiest to find me on LinkedIn. So my profile will be in the description. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm always available. Pop me a message. And the way that I work is really personalized. And so the first opportunity is, let's just chat like this, like you and I are having a chat. And let me find out about you and where you're at and where your body's at and the journey you've come on, so that I can really understand, because it's about getting to the root. And then understanding that we all have crazy lifestyles and it's not so easy to take something on new. One of the beauties of the work that I do is that, we're all already eating. So it's not like we're starting something new. Eating is something that's already in our day. So all we need to do is just tweak how we're eating and what we're eating. Just recalibrate the habit that's already there. And for each person, the capacity is different. And that capacity might shift and change also during a month or during a season, or depending on where the kids are. And these things are all shifting. And so I offer one-on-one coaching, not really coaching, I like to call it mentoring. So, where we would meet once a month online like this, and I gather the information, I put something together for you, depending on what your capacity is, which, some people, ideally, the goal is that we're all preparing our same food at home, and I want to guide you through that with recipes, everything, shopping lists, everything. But even if you're not capable of that or don't have the capacity for that, let's start where you do have the capacity, and let's gently start fine-tuning your habit around eating. And we do this consistently through a month, just talking back and forth, you going away with action steps to take. and then coming back and feeding back to me. And I'm taking this on board and tweaking and changing. And we just keep walking this journey together.
Wow. It strikes me that that feels beautifully supportive. I really, yeah, that is a really lovely way of working. So you can work presumably then with anybody worldwide, because you're online, which is
That's right. Yeah.
fabulous. Yeah. So what is how do people actually find you? Can you give a website address or your LinkedIn you mentioned? What is the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, so getting me on LinkedIn, and so the link will be over there. Otherwise, also find me via my website, which is eatfeelheal.com. And
Eatfeelheal.com. Great. Yes.
and there, everything you need is there. There's just a little click of a button, and you'll be able to reach me directly on WhatsApp. I'll meet you personally there, and we'll have a chat. All of that in the beginning, the whole discovery and getting to know you phase, I don't charge for. It's
Wow.
only at some stage if you feel that, yes, I like what I'm hearing, Philen, and I'd like to go a little bit further, then I'll present you with options. And those different options will have different costs. And depending on what your capacity is, we can find a way that works.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's a really elegant way, I think, of addressing some really chronic conditions and also preventative as well as you said. What a beautiful way of working. Thank you so much for the work you do. We honestly couldn't be more proud that you've chosen to join the CMA. You're just a remarkable man, an incredible practitioner, and we're very proud to have you with us. Thank you so much, Philen. And as I say, everybody, watch this space. We'll let you know when we're able to get this very busy man back. Thank you, Philen.
Thank you, Jayney. Appreciate you.
Pleasure. You too. Take care.